Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Living Ascension. So, yeah, it's funny because this wave is so big of stuff right now. We keep on saying that, but it really is. And it just keeps getting bigger. And then it's funny is that we have these like less and less words to talk about things. We have less and less ways to describe them because we're just simply being them, being present with them, getting through every moment.
Well, and we've hit on so many core issues that are manifesting in different ways that it's hard to not bring the same topics back up over and over and over because we're not doing it.
Right.
And we're not doing it 100% of the time, maybe in 50% of the time, but it's starting to get more creative and more, I don't want to say impending because that's judgment. But it's the word that came to me was it's getting more and more pregnant.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a good one. But I like
how you stop it.
I like the way you said we're getting more creative. That made me laugh because that is so true.
Right.
So much
Good morning,
more.
Yasmin.
Good morning, Yasmin. Yeah. And so what I have been witnessing is we are putting ourselves, so we've talked a lot about the precious, right? The things that the ego wants to protect and preserve because they believe they're because the ego believes it's crucial to our well-being, to our safety, to our
who we are.
Or who we are, right?
Right. Our definition, our role.
Right. And we could say, okay, I'll do all this stuff, but there's that Meatloaf song, right? But I won't do that, right? Remember that? I remember that song.
Well, and it's anytime you have that word but, you've finally gotten to it.
Right. And as I've said before, there's a person we knew that said, does the ego make my butt look big? Yeah, which is so true because it's every time we say but, it's the ego interjecting. But let me give you 1,000 reasons why you can't do that. Or, have anxiety or projection or history or all that kind of stuff, which is anything but right now.
Right.
So with the freneticism of everything that's going on and the chaos, which is really ramping up in individuals' realities and beyond, it's all our choice as to how willing we are to let go to a previously, uncomfortable level of letting go, right? So I realized it was funny because it's like I've known people who have massive things with control issues of certain details in their lives. And whether it's a relationship or taking care of somebody or something and becoming so controlling over it that it becomes a detriment to you and the thing that you are controlling, believe you're controlling to a point of paralysis, right? That you can't do it.
Right. And it's, we used to think of that as like OCD, the obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's like to the external, you just seem irrational about that particular item, thing, situation, circumstance, whatever. And it's getting to where it's not just at that level, it's at such an expanded level that everybody, and I hate to say everybody because that's absolute, but
so many
we all have a part of that right now.
Yeah, in some way,
whether it's your home, your car, your job, your family, your pets, your children, your the way you dress, the way you wear your hair. I have to color my hair, or I have to get my nails done, or I have to get a massage. I mean, it's everything that you use the words have to or need to
or can't unless I can't unless I do this, or I can't do this until I do this or whatever. And so I've been watching and how crazy out of left field the results are when the ego refuses to let go of that thing.
Right.
and let it be, and let it take care of itself. Let it be on its own journey, and let it, let it dissolve or evolve or change into what it is now versus what you were
Right.
holding on to it to be, an hour or two ago.
Well, and
Well,
if you really think about it, we're accessing such expanded levels of consciousness, but we're just accessing them. So currently our working remembrance is limited. And if we hold on to those things so tightly, we limit the possibilities to those things within our limited consciousness at this moment. But if we let go, we access so much more that could come out so much better than we could ever imagine, because we're remaining and choosing to stay that limited consciousness.
right. Right. Well, and there's always usually, well, I don't want to say usually, there's always, when we hold on to something that desperately, with death grip, clutches or whatever, there's always a desperate valuation that we give ourselves due to that situation, right? So I have to stay in this relationship because underneath that is, if I'm not in this relationship, then I'm a loser and I'm worth nothing. If if I'm in this role, right, and if I let go of this role, then I am not worth anything and I am nothing, right?
Right.
So like, whether it's people who are caretakers who have lost their identity into codependency, right? They are losing those who they're taking care of.
Right.
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 And, or there's the need for others to take care of what it is they're taking, whether it's an individual, an animal, or whatever. They're having to let go of that role, and it's earth shattering. Like, and I'm watching it go, somebody I know who had been tending to one of their elderly parents for years.
Right.
And their parent, passed away. And then now they're like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what to do with my time. There's this huge void. I mean, that you took care of your parents for a long time.
Yep.
And then it's like, well, and who am I? Because I have this big void now because that took up all of my attention. The kids moving to the other side of the country,
Right.
or whatever. Oh, well, now I'm not that role anymore. They're not in my lives. So now what do I do? Relationships, pets, I know somebody whose pets, on the verge of breaking. And I know others who've lost theirs after they've had, had an extended illness and stuff. And it's like, well, then it's like, what could then you sit there and the ego goes, oh, well, I obviously didn't do that well enough because they're not here anymore. So then therefore, then you're like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And then you get stuck in the past. And so there's all that stuff. But right now it's becoming so big. It's like, no, I can do this. I can do this. No. Right. Well, then until our expanded self says, I'm taking this away from you.
Right.
Because it doesn't serve you. It's paralyzing you, and it is preventing you from actually staying into, excuse my second. Alexa, stop. Sorry. There's a timer on our water outside. So anyway, but it's like, okay, let go of this.
Right.
And because you have now refused to let go on the 50 situations that you were given the opportunity to let go, well, now I'm doing it for you. I'm taking it away from you.
Right. Yes. Last night I had weird set of circumstances come up. One of my dogs, who doesn't bark a lot, was just losing it at the front window. And I was like, okay, I'll go look and see what's going on. And I looked across the street, and it was right at the bar of the window. And I kept doing like this, and I looked, and I finally realized it was like about a 40-pound bobcat across the street at my neighbor's, just peering in the fence. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, that's something legit to bark at. So I watched, and it turned and started coming across the street. Then a car came, and it jumped down into the storm drain. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So then barking again, 30 minutes later. Well, this time it's on my side of the street, relaxing, rolling around. Granted, I mean, we're hot here, like
Right.
105 hot.
Yeah.
And I can imagine those storm drains are probably pretty cool
Yeah.
and potentially even wet. And so immediately I'm like, okay, that cat could easily take my dogs. They're 30 to 40 pounds. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How can I control this situation? How can I make this better? How can I fix this? And I kept thinking, you know, oh no, what am I going to do? And so before I let him out again, I decided I better check the backyard to make sure that it's not in my backyard waiting for my dogs to be let out before
Right.
bed. So I go out there and there's a bird that has a baby bird that has left its nest too soon. Right there.
Oh no. Yeah.
And my dogs are bird dogs. They eat birds. So I'm like, great. I've got the bobcat out front. I've got the
bird.
baby bird in the back who, you know, it will run and fly a little bit, but you know, not even a foot off the ground. The parents
Right.
are going nuts. So I end up taking them out one at a time on the leash just to get that done. And I'm sitting there and I'm, you know, I'm Googling, how do I solve this? How do I fence off part of my yard for this little bird? And finally I just went, you know what? Nature has figured this out long before I showed up. And I need to just let this go. But, you know, the ego kept wanting to say, oh, but if something happened to one of your dogs, what kind of responsible owner are you? And,
Right.
you know, and that bird, you have that bird's life in your hands and you could prevent this and you could do this. And I mean, all night long, I kept fighting that battle in my mind. And I was like, it's beyond me. I have to trust that there's a plan for all of this and that it will figure it out. So I did go out before I let the dogs out this morning. No bobcat, and that baby bird is nowhere in sight. And it's like, okay, I have to trust that everything worked out.
So either the baby bird figured it out or the bobcat ate it or whatever.
Right. Whatever. But it was one of those things where it was just like, but it was drawing me and pulling at those heartstrings of, you're a bad person if you don't step up and make this situation better, control this.
Right.
And it's like, if I'd been in control, I wouldn't have let that bird nest in that pot, which was right over my patio, which meant that this situation would have happened. I would have made sure they were out farther away. But I kept thinking, okay, this is that control that we're talking about, is feeling that need to manage something because it reflects on you or it defines you or you believe that it does.
Right. You believe that it does because of what other people have said. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So it's funny too, because the thing that I have seen coming up. So what's really interesting to me is, well, over the past several months, my life has been crazy full in ways that I have to have my full attention on this moment. And I was getting very agitated. I was starting to get very agitated, you know, because I'm like, no, I want to do this. And I don't, you know, like, and I was getting really frustrated because I'd be trying to move this. And it's like, no, here, keep your attention here. Right.
Right.
And then there are all these distracting things that would come up, or these potentially distracting things like that you're talking about. And it's like, no, stay here. Just stay here. And that's all I kept on getting, is stay right here. And I was like getting to be this pouty child, like really getting irritated because I'm like, no, but you know, and it's like, no, well, do you want to do this? This is in front of you. Are you going to pay attention to it?
Right.
And so at some point I at some point I chose to surrender to what was in front of me. And when we surrender into what's in front of you, then you don't have time, especially right now in the world and the way it's going, you don't have time to spend all of this other energy on all this other stuff like that would tend to other people's and other things' journeys. Well, guess what? That is the complete opposite of what we have trained ourselves to do in this world, in this set of dimensions, right? Because what is the pervasive message that we see everywhere is, oh, the only way you're of value is if you're of service. So if you just do things for yourself, you're bad.
Right.
And you're just ego driven. It's like, no, actually, it's quite the opposite. If the only thing I do is to serve other people, because inside I believe that's the only thing that makes me a good person, then that's all ego driven.
Exactly. Exactly.
And if I do something to make somebody happy, ego driven. If I do something to appease somebody, ego driven, because somewhere in there, I believe that makes me a more valuable person, because that person will approve of me, or somebody around them will approve of me and think I'm a good person because of that. So therefore that must be true. Right. So even to this, even to this place of, it was very, like somebody was talking this weekend, and, I was out taking, I was, I traveled out to Colorado and taking my 3rd-degree black belt test in Kung Fu. And, that is about as self-central as you can do. Like, basically, it's all about your own discipline. It's all about your own knowledge and remembrance and all that kind of stuff. And it's really about that inner balance. Well, then somebody's talking about, oh, well, you do this for the self, but then you also do this for others. And it was like under this, like trying to pull this string of obligation that you have to do this, which really was a shaded way of them saying, oh, well, no, because actually it's all about me, not you. So you need to pay me money to do this. Since you're here, you might as well, and it was just it was so blatant. I was like, oh, wow. And people just fall for it.
Right.
Because we are trained to say, oh no, well, if you do something for the self, that's just a nice to have. That's like an icing on the cake. But the thing you should be doing is the stuff for others underneath it that the cake is. But usually when somebody's saying that, they're saying, well, really, you should be doing it for me. Right. Or for.
Right. Which, I found when we were discussing what we were going to talk about today, like Friday, I guess. And I kept coming up with this thing about the new thing in commercials is saying, well, you deserve this.
Yeah.
Which really is manipulating you into you should pay me money to buy my products and services, because I am telling you that will make you a better person.
Right.
Because you deserve that. And I found that so manipulative and so being controlled.
Yes. Yes. And we have masked it right under our nose in plain sight, it's all over the place. And it seems to be, that's all I keep on seeing these messages of. And even like on social media, it's like, oh, well, I don't care if you do this, this, and this, but what I care is, that you serve others and that you're here for service. And it's like, oh, in the spiritual community, we've really gotten big on the ego with that. Right.
Right. Right.
And it's like, at the end of the day, none of us truly do anything for anybody else but ourselves. None of us.
But if we tie it back into what we talked about last week and the whole invisibility thing, that's the power behind the invisibility thing, is to nourish the self. Nourish the self to the point where you then begin overflowing to others. And in that whole process, that's that power. And, if the lack of service to others makes you invisible, or we believe it makes us invisible, it really doesn't, because that's when you gain that inner strength to then share. And it becomes just a natural consequence.
Yes.
Of what it is in bringing your own joy.
Yeah.
You share that joy with others, which then becomes infectious, literally.
Well, and it also sets the stage of holding the space to allow others to do the same for themselves.
Right. And I keep coming back to, that's the difference between teaching someone to fish versus giving them a fish.
Right.
Because if you lead by that example, what a perfect way to teach them how to do that for themselves, so they never have to rely externally for that support.
Right.
And it makes letting go of control of things so much easier.
Right. Except when so here's the thing, the first step is usually the most challenging, because it's letting go of that thing. It's almost like, you know, in my head, I'm seeing, you know, we've been carrying this thing for so long. We've forgotten it's not my, it's, I've forgotten it. I've been carrying this thing for so long. I've forgotten it's not my arm. Right.
Right.
And so you finally cut it away and it's like, oh my God, like, oh, I feel, you know, like I said, the person I know whose parents passed away after such a long time of taking care of them, it was like, I have a huge void. I don't know what to do now
Right.
because it has filled my life for so long and I've complained about it for so long and put so much energy about how miserable I was from it and how blah, 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 blah. And I put energy, all of that time and energy into all that on top of the caretaking itself. Well, now what do I do with all this time? What do I do with
Right.
all this space?
Well, and at that point, you had no idea how embedded and ingrained that activity was with you until it's gone. And you know, I always talk about, you know, you're carrying a heavy bucket full of something, and you don't know how heavy it is or how much it hurts till you put it down, and then have to pick it back up again.
Right.
Like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
my gosh, I can't do that.
Yeah. 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 So that's what's going on. And it's funny because I was reflecting on that after we were texting last night and I was like, you know, really for me, it's been a continuous flow of that. I want to say discomfort to the ego, because for me, it's been, I'm not being allowed to attach myself to anything but what's in front of me right now for like months. Right. And I try, and the ego is trying so desperately, and the expanded self is going, nope, nope, nope. So, but then it was funny because this morning, because I've gotten past all the big things, you know, like I'm like, oh, ooh, well, actually, this feels so much better, right? And now the other things that I thought I wanted to go look at before, I was like, okay,
Right. Just not quite as important.
right. And it's funny because when we do that and we stop the attachments to it, right?
Right.
Then it's like, well, no, actually, I'm just gonna trust the way it is right now. I'm good. It's good, you know, and it's a great
Yeah.
lesson in letting go, a great lesson in presence with that.
Right. I mean, this brings in so many things that we've talked about. It brings in, you know, trust and guidance and presence. And trust and guidance are two of the courses that we offer in Wonderland, which are fabulous. And it's just putting all that into practice and bringing all of that into the present moment. And those are the tools to help you let go of control. Because I know when I was looking at that last night, that's what I had to keep reminding myself is it's all perfect. And that to trust this process and to allow this and to trust that I'm going to get the guidance that I need to what is the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about, you know, you're talking about that with the animals and stuff. And the lesson that we've had this past year or so, because we have the park behind our house and we walk, my husband and I walk twice a
Right.
day. So we see when the ducks or the geese or whatever have babies,
Right.
and then sometimes they disappear.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do. There's nothing. It's not my job. It's not my job to intervene. Right.
Right. Well, and you know, it's so funny because I remember when I was little and would run into a set of circumstances like that. It was probably my father would say, well, that's why they have so many, is because if all of them lived every time, the world would be overrun
Right.
by
Right.
all these animals. I can take all the squeaker toys out of the room and they manage to find one and bring it back in here.
Well, that's just the dogs agreeing.
Right, exactly.
But yeah. And so, and that's the most challenging thing because we put so much identification with roles, right? As a child, as a parent, you know,
Right.
as a spouse, as a worker, as a friend, you know, what's the definition of this? What's the definition of that? And so, but the thing that, you know, we don't want to look at, because here's the thing, if I sat and talked to anybody, right, and was like, yeah, you might want to let this go right now. Whatever it is, this is how you know what it is that you're blind to, right? Whatever
Right.
it is if there's something in your reality that if somebody said to you, you know, it's time for you to let go of that, you'd be like, oh yeah, no, I can't. There's no way I can. And I'll give you 50 reasons why I can. Right.
Right.
Whether, you know, and the easy ones are the kids, the spouse, the pets, the, you know, whatever, you know, the job,
Right.
whatever. But there are some things that are just so subtle and so subtly, like, you know, woven into the fabric of our realities
Yep.
that we just don't realize how much we structure our entire reality around it, right? I mean, it's like, um, yeah, and when somebody is sick, whether it's a pet, a child, a parent, or whatever in your reality, right? That's one thing that's very obvious that takes your attention, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but the thing is, at the end of the day, it goes back to what we talk about, and those of us who claim to be healers, it's like, well, yes and no, we're all healers, but we don't heal anybody but ourselves, right? So, you
Right.
know, I call
I
it,
find it interesting how much stock is given to testimonials because everyone's attached to the outcome, you
right.
know, and the outcome is, you know, I don't heal you, you heal yourself. I just open the door, show you the path, provide you with some new information or insight that you might not be aware of.
And open up, and maybe open you up to frequencies you're not otherwise allowing yourself to
Right.
access yet, and whatever, right? So that's all dependent on you. It's all dependent on how ready, willing, and able the
Right.
individual is
Exactly.
who comes into this, you know,
Exactly.
into a session with me or you or classes or whatever, and what they actually do with it, and whether they actually embrace it or not. And that's
Right.
has nothing to do with us.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, you know, it's funny because it also ties back to these teaching styles of, you know, I was grumbly a little bit, right, when I was away, because an instructor that I have on like my diving, like, is very, you have all the facts, you know how to deal with this, right? And you put in with a situation, then deal with it, and not coddling or hand holding at all. Well, here's the thing, you can die diving,
Right.
right? Very easily. And so here's, if you're not fully equipped to take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, when you're down under, even if you have a buddy or whatever, it's you. So you need to know what to
Exactly.
do, right? And so I totally appreciate and respect, even though the ego does not, because the ego's like, oh, well, what do I do? Right. And then the reflection back is, what do you do? Which has made me a better diver, has actually made me a really good diver because of that. And so the funny part was, being a little irritated about that individual, I realized, wait a second, though, that's the kind of instructor I am, right? In all of this, right? It's always, what do you get? What is your guidance? Like, what, you know,
Right.
what do you feel it is? Because that is my goal, is allowing you to be empowered to access that stuff yourself, right? So that's what we're doing to ourselves, essentially, at a collective level, right? This is what we're doing in terms of, when we are, first of all, when we have become so obsessed, so controlling over something in our reality, it is a huge red flag that it is taking away our power, right? Which is the
Right.
opposite of what we think it is doing,
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
right? It's
Yeah. I mean, which, you know, points all the way back to Wonderland. It's never what you think it is. It's typically the opposite.
right. Right. And it's something we don't want to hear. Right. It's this, yeah, that just doesn't, yeah, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you know, this is still important. This is like, no, I have to do this. This is my
Right.
calling, or this is like what I'm called to be of service to do. And I'm always laughing about that, because it's like, listen to yourself. What if you don't? What if you're not called to serve? What if you don't do what you think you're called to service to do? Then what?
Right.
Then you feel like what? You feel like you're going to be judged as a bad person. You feel like you're going to be judged and go to hell, or you're going to be judged and not, yeah,
Or
like,
be unloved
be unloved,
or
be like,
feel that you are unlovable.
right.
So not even the potential.
And not divine, and whatever, however you want to put it, in whatever terms, right? pretty much all that drives us has to come, it comes down to different things. And these, like, if I don't do this, that, so it's a huge shift. And what's interesting is the more I focus on that, the more I am surrendering, right, in a different way to just the present. That's what, just
Right.
what's in front of me, just what my heart is drawing me to, what my guidance is drawing me to, and nothing else matters, right?
Right.
The more I do that, the more I keep on seeing these like warning things all over the place of, oh, no, 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 you're supposed to think of others first. You're supposed to do other things first. And it's almost like it's breaking the system down, right?
Right.
And and I feel like that's what we're getting to collectively, because everybody's doing all of these shoulds, you shouldn't, you should, and you have to, you can't. And it's getting louder and louder and louder. I mean, look at what we went through. I mean, okay, so the first big wave of that was the COVID wave, right? Oh, you should wear a mask. You should get vaccinated. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. And it was like, wow. And what were all of I don't want to call it propaganda. It sounds like judgment, but I mean, truly it was propaganda. What were all the campaigns about? Oh, well, if you cared about the people around you, then you will do this.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
And if you don't, then you are a bad and selfish person.
Right. My favorite, and this is not COVID related, but the commercials where they have the grandmother holding the grandchild and the grandmother turns into the big bad wolf because she didn't get her whooping cough shot.
Oh, I had never saw that one.
And it was just like, wow.
Yeah, if you don't want to do it for you, do it for all the people around you. I mean, that's become the, like the guilt trip.
Right.
And what kind of person are you if you don't do it for your grandbaby or your child,
Right.
or your,
Or you're a horrible parent if you let your parents handle your child and not ensure that they've been
oh
immunized
yeah,
against all these myriad of things.
right, right. And it's like, and we get so lost in that. And so we're just talking about really blatant things. I mean, most of us have like really easy ones in our realities that we're not even, that we're totally blind to.
Right, right.
And
Well, and I found that for myself, a lot of the subtle things that I felt I needed to control translated into bigger things, like my need to feel in control of my circumstances because I felt so out of control of my circumstances. And the bottom line was I wasn't giving myself any priority.
right. Well, and because it's convenient, right? Because then it's like, well, because that now I can spend all my energy on this other stuff, right? And not have to look at myself.
Right.
And it's just like, the thing that is so interesting to me is it all comes down to the same thing that I've been talking about for years, that we've been talking about together for years. It all comes down to the core of our divine right and our divine abilities is unconditional self-love. The core to that of anything comes down to that. And any work for us to do is the lack of that, or the belief, or blocking it
Right.
from ourselves. Right.
Right.
And so is it coincidence that as we have this huge movement of consciousness and awakening going, that we have a even bigger movement trying to guilt us into not doing it, right? Because no, 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 no. It's all about other people. It's all about service to humanity. It's all about serving others. It's all about, doing it for your whatever, your grandchild or your whatever.
Right.
And we put so much energy, and that's the whole thing, is it's really challenging to explain it, because I will say that though this past, I can't believe it's June, it's the middle of June, and it's like, because I want to say the first couple of months of the year, no, the first 6 months of the year for me have been so completely chaotic.
Right.
In a good way, in a way of these huge things have been coming in front of me to do that I love, that I am passionate about, that, that I find juicy and all that kind of stuff. But then I want to get pulled to this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. And then there are these obligations, and it's like, well, and at some point the expanded self says, do you want to do this, or do you want to waste your time doing that?
Right. Right.
You know, what feels better to you really ultimately once you let go of the guilt of not taking care of that, right? And the key is, and if we want to truly be the example and be the change, it's to be this in every moment, to be all of this and none of that.
Right. Right.
Because then it gives us the space. And it's so challenging to explain that to somebody until they experience it, of saying, if you let go of this, you will have so much more space in your life to really pursue those things that allow you to be joy,
Absolutely.
right? You know,
Absolutely.
and so yes, what happens a lot of times when it gets ripped away from us is that there's a void, or we believe there's a void, right? And that
Which really is just that creative void and that space.
yes, the potential, the space
Exactly.
of unlimited potential.
Right. Right.
And then the ego gets overwhelmed, right? And that's really where I found I had my overwhelming moments, was that space of unlimited potential. And it's like, well, look at what you're creating for yourself. Like, what it like, and it's funny, it's weird to explain, but that's what's going on is what it, well, if you do allow yourself to saturate in that, oh my God, that just like increases potential like 1,000-fold.
It really does. And connecting into that allows you to connect to things that are beyond your wildest imagination, your wildest dreams, which that's really what we're after.
And we deserve to create that, right? You're talking about the deserving. We deserve
Right.
to create that for ourselves. And that's
Right.
the true deservance. That's the true like divine right thing, right?
Exactly.
Of creation. So we've created this whole thing, but so really the big message that we wanted to talk about is this whole like whatever those things we're blind to. So like if
Right.
and the thing is, I don't want to say fortunately or unfortunately, the thing is that right now it's time to drop them, right? So if we are blind to it and paralyzed by it, it's going to be exploding in our faces until we just let go.
Right.
And there's no like threat about that. It's like, I realized that something went on this weekend and I flowed through the whole thing and I was like, I am so happy. Like, I'm not touched by that anymore. Right. And it was in a peripheral, it was a peripheral to me. And it was like, no, you're here. This is what you're here to do. This is what you're doing right now. And this is for you. And this is you, right? That, not you, not your journey.
Right. Right.
And it's being taken care of. And no judgment.
Right. That's the key that has really helped me, is that everyone's journey is perfect, whatever choices they make. And that in that's another way of letting go of control, is saying, I don't have to participate in that because I know it's already perfect.
Right. Right.
And if it's not the choices that I would make, it doesn't matter, because it's not my journey and it's perfect for that person.
Right. Right. And it's funny because multiple times I've had those moments. And we tend to do this with our kids and that kind of stuff. And I know you were talking to one of your kids about where they, like what they want to do with their life. And it's like, at some point you just have to say it's your journey, right? It's your
Right.
choice.
Right.
Whatever's going to allow you to live your joy, right? Whether you're happy with it or not is irrelevant, because that has to do with you and not them.
Exactly.
Like Yasmin's on here, and I know Yasmin and I had a conversation last week, and we were talking about that with her son and kart racing, and we talk about things with our kids, and like with me it was when we took our daughter diving a couple weeks ago in Cozumel, and yes, she's certified and all kind of stuff in 23. And the first dive, I had to turn off Mama Bear. I had to turn it off because my husband was my buddy. She had a buddy, we're with 3 dive masters and everything else. And I found the first dive, all I kept on doing was looking around for her. Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Is she okay? Is she okay? And I was like surprised at myself, right? To think that, and then at some point I literally had to just, like, this is the voice that came in. She's an adult. She is trained. Right. She's certified. and she has her own buddy, and we have other people around, all the people around us, and she will do what she needs to do. And that was when I was able to let go and then enjoy myself. So that I was like, but
Right.
that's the whole thing, is we do that all the time. I worry about, you worry about your pets, or you worry about your kids, or you worry about your spouse, or you're about what they're doing and what they're not doing, if they're doing it right, if they're going to get killed, if they're going to do, and at some point, yes, guess what? At some point, here's a news flash, we're all going to die.
We're all gonna die. Absolutely.
That's what we created with these bodies. I mean, but we don't die. Our bodies do, but we don't.
Right.
So at some point, we're going to shed these bodies like an old pair of jeans and move on to what the next set of lessons are. And there is nothing anyone else can do about it. There is nothing we can do about anybody else. So,
So
so
first step, what's our intention?
yes. So our intention is being able to see that within us, like what those things are in our realities that paralyze us, that we're blind to, right?
Right.
In terms of not feeding our own journey, truly.
Right. And to hold ourselves in a place of non-judgment as we discover these things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
And
important.
not only non-judgment, but gratitude for them, for what they've served us with, right? That goes back to the whole forgiveness cycle from our forgiveness course.
Right.
The apology, forgiveness, acceptance, embrace, love, and then gratitude for having it. And I think that's the first step, because it's gonna be several steps of letting go. When we do it voluntarily, right? It really is. It sounds easier than the ego allows it to be, especially when it's something that's deeply embedded that we've been blind to within ourselves, right? So if we are gentle and loving with ourselves and say, okay, let me see it for what it is, in a way that is joyful and easy, and forgiveness and gratitude, and to see how it fit into the big picture. I think that's maybe the first step to then being able to start letting it go.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, and let's do that in a gentle, loving, joyous way.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So everybody sit back, take a deep breath, close your eyes. As we step out of separation back into wholeness and oneness, and we hold ourselves in the vibration where that is our truth, that is from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. Oh, it was interesting in the beginning. All I heard was, oh, this is so shaky, so shaky. And I realized it was shaky like the breaking an addiction. And I was like, oh, that's truly what it is. And then I could see what, then I could see it. It's truly an addiction. And so that's why the guidance is start with seeing it and just, loving it, because it's now, then you can start detaching from it and letting it go, because that's why it feels so catastrophic when it gets torn away from you, is because it's like going through withdrawal.
Right.
And so we sat with that, and it was like, okay, well, then let's pull the curtains back and let the waters calm, right? And then, pull them back more. And that felt like a very collective thing. That was
Right. Yeah.
really big. But it felt very shaky. So it was like patience, a lot of patience.
Yeah. It seemed really chaotic in the beginning. Really chaotic. A lot of finger pointing, like, oh, this is your fault. Collectively, everybody's blaming everybody else. And but by the end, it really settled nicely.
Yeah, it
and
did.
just
It did.
really felt good. And at one point I was like, oh my gosh, how long have we been out here?
Not even 10 minutes. So
That was definitely
yeah, it felt really
10,
good.
10 minutes well spent.
That felt really good. Yep. And I was like, okay, I'm putting a bookmark here, coming back to this later,
Right.
But I mean, in a way, it's funny because I'm like, okay, I know I've been going through this for months. So whatever else is left for me,
Yep.
let's do it without the crazy, ripping it away. So baby steps, and all that is all about self-love and self-nourishment. It is honoring where you've been, like Sarah was saying, without judgment, in an acceptance place, and to be able to see it, to embrace it, to have gratitude for it, even when we see it, instead of judging it as bad, saying, okay, I see how it's fit into my journey. I see how it allowed me to carry this out, to complete this set of lessons. Okay.
Right.
And now I can move on and do this differently.
Right. And that also includes, no self-harm. Don't bash yourself for, oh, I can't believe I was doing that, or
Which we tend to do,
we
right? Because
do.
then we go, the first thing is, when we see it a lot of times, is, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that for so long. I can't believe I wasted so much time. I can't believe, I can't believe, I can't believe. That's the judgment thing. So be gentle with yourself.
Yes.
It's perfect. It's
really
been perfect. And now it's perfect to let it go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it brought you to here. That's all you can ask.
Right.
All right. So baby steps this week, and be loving with yourself.
Right. And repeat this. If you need, save this video, save this place, like it, love it, whatever way you can keep it in your stream, so that way you're able to repeat it. And if you want, download the podcast so you can redo the meditation portion over and over and over, however many times you're guided to.
Because outside of space and time, there's only that moment. So
right.
And
we'd love to hear your experiences.
Yes. And and I'm sure, we're sure others who are doing the same, because this is a big collective thing. So please pass this on.
Right.
Pass it on. Let it help others too.
Right.
Yeah.
All
right.
What better? Send it on to someone who, and then you can call each other out on, there's your precious.
There's your prizes. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni
signing off with this week's Living Ascension. Have a good one.